everyone, and many thanks for your interest in this talk. I present a study testing the mediating role of perceptual representations of stimulus properties on liking for music, in collaboration with Tom Kaplan and Marco Spears at the Queen Mary University of London, and published in the Annals of New York Academy of Sciences. You can freely access the article through the link at the bottom and via the QR at the bottom right. We rely on interacting with the environment to guide our behavior, to be in the world. We seek out and engage in behaviors that lead to positive or rewarding outcomes. And in the same way, we avoid those that yield negative or punitive consequences. In other words, our choices and actions are motivated by the pleasure that we expect or obtain from them. This ability to judge the external world as desirable or avoidable, liked or disliked, beneficial or damaging, enables comparing, deciding, and prioritizing actions. Moreover, we build our knowledge of the world based on how much we like the elements of the environment. And we do so by learning and generating expectations about them. Hedonic valuation is therefore a fundamental aspect of cognition and crucial for survival. Hedonic valuation is the process of assigning hedonic value to objects, situations, and events we encounter or anticipate, depending on our current state, goals, and expectations. Hedonic values are responses to projections from sensory systems to distributed nuclei in the reward system, modulated by input from the interoceptive and executive systems, signaling homeostatic state and contextual information relevant to the valuation event. Because we are not passive recording machines, it stands to reason that we do not directly evaluate stimulus information, but assign hedonic value to its perceptual representation, modulated by our internal and external conditions. So, our question is whether and to what extent perceptual representations of stimulus information mediate the hedonic evaluation of such information. Specifically, we test the hypothesis of a mediating role of perceptual representations on the relationship between variations in stimulus properties and liking. Humans assign elementary hedonic value to biologically relevant objects like food or faces, but also to abstract and cultural objects like money and music, which concurs with the common currency hypothesis for a single narrow basis for pleasure arising from different sensory and cognitive states. In this context, music provides a rich model domain to test the hypothesis of a mediating role of perceptual representations on liking, in this case for melodies varying in balance, counter, symmetry, or complexity. We chose these attributes because the literature has shown that they affect liking not only for music, but also for visual objects. To test our hypothesis in the music domain, we curated the NatMUST, a publicly available novel set of stimuli consisting of 96 short monophonic melodies from the Western classical canon, systematically varying in one of these four attributes. These two strategies aim to enhance the generalizability and ecological validity of our findings. However, this also obliged us to restrict the analysis to unfamiliar melodies to minimize the effects of vertical knowledge resulting from specific episodic memories of the melodies. Here's an example of a balanced stimulus extracted from Stravinsky's Petrushka. From the same piece, we also have an imbalanced excerpt. From Mahler 5, here's a smooth melody. And the Jagged One. From Weber's Variation 1 from his Variations Opus 27, we get a symmetric example. and an asymmetric one. And finally, Beethoven's Variation 7 provides an example of a simple melody. While Variation 8 offers its complex counterpart. The full set is available at OSF, so to access this, you are very welcome to scan the QR code at the bottom right or simply follow the link centered at the bottom of this slide. We assessed these melodies using the NatMUST toolbox, which is another open source for research, and extracted feature-based composite measures of balance, contour, symmetry, and complexity. In addition, we computed the information content for each stimulus derived from a long-term idiom model trained on Western music corpora, which estimates the conditional probability of each event in each stimulus given the preceding sequence. We used long-term log-scale total information content to account for event density and the Weber-Fechner law. Behavioral and computational assessments confirmed that perceptual ratings consistently reflected the intended variation within each subset, which was significantly associated with computational measures of feature-based balance, contour, symmetry, and complexity. This demonstrates that the NatMUST stimuli have acceptable construct validity in systematically manipulating non-musicians' perception of musical balance, contour, symmetry, and complexity. To test our hypothesis of a mediating role of perceptual representations on the relationship between stimulus information and liking, 94 non-musicians rated the NatMUST stimuli twice. First, they rated their liking for and familiarity with each melody, and then they rated the perceived varying property and perceived predictability of each melody. This precluded contamination of liking ratings by perceptual ratings, which is essential to address our research question. Then we formalized our hypothesis as a structural equation model of the data, accounting for the stimulus information, its perceptual representation, and hedonic evaluation. First, we expected each stimulus property as assessed by our NatMUST measure to affect its corresponding perceptual representation. Then, we expected perceptual representations and information content to affect perceived unpredictability. And finally, we hypothesized that perceptual representations of the varying property and perceived unpredictability would explain a considerable proportion of the variance in liking for the stimuli. To account for the variability between and within participants and stimuli, the structural equation model was made of linear mixed effects models with slopes and intercepts per participant and intercepts per stimulus as random effects. The results of fitting this sum structure for each subset revealed consistencies in the structure of relationships across variations in dominant stimulus information. That is, the stimulus information or the stimulus properties impacted their perceptual representations across subsets. Perceptual representations in turn influenced perceived unpredictability across subsets, and perceived unpredictability affected liking for stimuli in most subsets. Nevertheless, the effects of stimulus properties varied between subsets. Information content only affected perceived imbalance and complexity, and stimulus complexity was the only stimulus property directly influencing liking. In other words, perceptual representations purely mediated the effects of information content, balance, contour, and symmetry, and partially mediated the effects of stimulus complexity, while perceived unpredictability purely mediated the influence of perceived jaggedness, asymmetry, and complexity, and perceived imbalance mediated the effects of stimulus imbalance and information content on liking. Notwithstanding these nuances reflecting the specific nature of stimulus information, the overall results support a hypothesis of a mediating role of perceptual representations on the hedonic evaluation of stimulus information. Across models, the random effects explain a substantial proportion of the variance, most of it in the models of perceived unpredictability and liking. Likelihood ratio tests show statistical superiority of the firm models over models excluding any random effects. Moreover, removing the random effects per participant in the contour subset or per stimulus across subsets makes the SEMs unacceptable as they involve missing paths. In summary, this study pioneers a systematic investigation of the relationships between stimulus information, its perceptual representations, and the pleasure that we get from perceiving them. In so doing, it contributes new open resources for research and yields two fundamental empirical findings. On the one hand, it unveils a mediating role of perceptual representations in the impact of stimulus properties, in this case balance, contour symmetry, complexity, and unpredictability, upon liking for melodic accepts. On the other hand, it demonstrates the central relevance of variability due to participants and stimuli, which is typically disregarded as noise in the literature. And this is very important to understand perceptual and evaluative mechanisms. Both findings align with growing research supporting the situated nature of appreciation, according to which the pleasure of perceiving is driven by how sensory information is processed in the brain, considering the individual's current state, goals, expectations, and context. In this vein, our approach goes a step further in testing how particular aspects of sensory information are represented and what their relevance is for evaluative judgments such as liking. If you want to know more, you can access the published paper using the link at the bottom and the QR code on the right, and of course feel free to contact us at any time. Thank you very much and have a very nice rest of the day.